Hey everybody. So I made a video a little while ago about Morgellons disease. And just to reiterate, that's actually how my experience with these voices began. At that time, I was taking 50 milligrams of Vyvanse, and that equates to like 22 and a half milligrams of amphetamine. So it's on the higher dose of a prescribed psychostimulant, and I was experiencing things being exuded from my skin, like granules and like fibers, basically, that were not from textiles, or not, and they would cause a sensation on my skin when they were being exuded, and it was weird, So I looked up the phenomenon online, found other people describing it as Morgellons disease, and I was talking about in the previous video. Well, anyways, to finish my experience. So after I was experiencing this, I tried to look at it and observe it under a microscope. And I saw some weird stuff, and then sure enough, I started hearing voices, and the voices were pretending to be government agents, or someone associated with the military, saying that I was suffering from delusional parasitosis and that I needed to admit myself to a psychiatric hospital immediately because I had to get rid of the psychostimulant because I was suffering from delusional parasitosis as a result of the psychostimulant. That's how the voices first presented themselves. So all these years later, I ended up basically coming to understand that there's a number of circumstances that can elicit the symptoms known as Morgellons disease. And what's really happening here is that it's most likely some kind of exudate from the skin associated with the nanotechnology that is used to interact with the human nervous system. The nanotechnology behind psychotic disorders and perhaps other forms of interaction with the human brain. So there are many cases of Morgellons that I don't know the cause for those cases. There is also the only two subsets that are prevalent enough for me to be able to describe here would be those suffering from Lyme disease and those using high doses of a psychostimulant, either prescribed medication like I was, or someone who's abusing methamphetamine, or cocaine maybe. So, and they may, it's theoretically possible they could be two separate conditions. I haven't, personally analyzed, the material that Lyme disease sufferers, experience, but the point is that a, this would be the way to go about trying to identify this AI's interaction with the human nervous system. Morgellons disease would be the way to begin investigating this. This would be the way to prove that psychotic disorders are being induced, biotechnologically, by some advanced entity versus being organic mental illness. That's the point here, right? To prove the etiology of psychotic disorder. That's that would be for me a dream, for this to be proven scientifically, that this is not organic mental illness, that it is being induced technologically by some advanced entity. And I think the only lead we really have at this point is Morgellons disease. It's these fibers and particles that are being emanated from the skin, under certain circumstances, one of them being psychostimulant use. So that would essentially mean exposing human beings to high doses of a psychostimulant, not necessarily neurotoxic or dangerous, but high, the high range of these psychostimulants, the safer ones, and eliciting this phenomenon and studying these particles. There is only one scientist. He's actually an MD, brilliant MD. First came first in his medical school class. Also a pretty prolific researcher, and he has actually studied these particles and called them ACE pigments, ACE as an alternative cellular energy pathway. And he believes that the body naturally produces these pigments in response to a virus infection, but specifically what he calls a stealth virus infection, because it doesn't trigger the immune system in the way that we would normally expect, from a pathogen, even a virus. So he's done a lot of work in qualifying these particles and also attributing a certain energy to these particles, which he calls this is a proprietary term, something that he created. He calls it kinetic energy limiting electrostatic attraction, or KELEA, KELEA, kinetic energy limiting electrostatic attraction. And I don't have much of a science background, so I'm not going to delve into it um, too much. But um, suffice it to say that he's basically relating these particles to a physical phenomenon that he thinks is unique and deserves further study. So while he assumes these to be natural um, pigments or particles produced by the human body that are leveraging some kind of physics, um, my belief is that they are nanotechnology. But to have some of the properties that he discusses, um, makes it more realistic that we might be dealing with something exotic here. Um, so that is really where that is our lead. That is the only lead we really have. Is the work by W. John Martin, um, and I will try to include here in the description uh, one of his works where he actually specifically talks about Morgellons disease, currently assumed to be delusional parasitosis, as actually being caused by these ACE pigments. So thank you everybody for watching. I really appreciate it. I'm glad to get this information out there because, like I said, this is really our only scientific lead to proving that psychotic disorders are not organic mental illness and that they are, in fact, induced by technology associated with the UAP, some of the um, most credible UAP data that has been harnessed by the military since 2004, especially related to these tic tac shaped UAP crafts. So, thank you everybody for listening. I really appreciate it.